Operations Committee. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Commissioners Joliet,
Here.
Jackson, Lutz,
Here.
Nelson,
Here.
Hoffman,
Present.
Spiz,
Present.
Gershenson,
Here.
ex officio, Greg Johnson.
Present.
Mr. Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you very much. I don't think any of you haven't led for me, right? No, so now I just get to call me.
So it's your turn.
Oh, I can, yeah.
Yeah.
I pledge
Allegiance to the flag
of
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation,
nation,
under
God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes dated September 5th, moved by Commissioner Spiz, seconded by Commissioner Lubes. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. That passes. I would entertain a motion to approve today's agenda, moved by Commissioner Lubes, seconded by Commissioner Joliet. All in favor of approving today's agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Right, that passes too. Let's move into public comment number 1. Anyone from the public wishing to speak on any matter on the agenda, please speak your mind now. Seeing none, we'll move on to communications item A. Commissioner Gershenson, did you have a motion?
I do. I'd like to remove it from communications and have a presentation on it, and Jill is here, and she was planning to be here anyway, which is great, thank you for that. But this is a great example of something we all of us asked for the report, and it was put on communications instead of being put on the agenda. So maybe there's something I'm missing, and maybe it's incumbent upon us to ask for it to come off communications, but.
So this is a good question. I know Amy made a lot of effort in putting the word report in the title, so thank you for that. Did we want them to just not be communications anymore? Is that?
I think if you ask for a report, then it goes on the agenda.
Okay, Commissioner.
I guess, just a question, maybe a point of order, and maybe that's why Patty's in here. Because I know in the regular board meetings, we do presentations and everything under communications. So why couldn't we still leave it under communications? They can still come and do the presentation,
Would do a
Well, that's fine.
presentation,
right?
yeah.
If they're present, we could,
Well,
if
that's fine.
Okay.
maybe we
Yeah.
change the title, communications and presentations or something like that, but I think our board rules say just communications, so I don't
Yeah, well,
change it
that's
again.
fine.
It's at the, excuse me, if you
No,
don't mind.
go ahead.
It's the preference of the chair.
Okay.
All power to you.
Oh, God. Then I actually prefer it in a separate section, communications, but happy to do presentations and actually flesh those out. Yeah, I don't think we need to gloss over communications. That's the whole point of.
We
yeah.
can do that, but the the contents of the agenda is the chair's decision, so that, so it depends if the chair wants to have a presentation along with the
Sure.
report or not, so.
Well, sure, a lot of reports we don't want a presentation.
That's a slippery Pandora's box.
Well, I mean, it's sufficient to read it.
For sure. I
This
think.
one is so well done. I think it deserves our attention. It's the first one. I
Yeah.
believe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think just like as a general rule, because of our conversation a fortnight ago, I think we should anticipate fleshing out reports, but then have the preference or have the ability to not need to do that if we don't feel like it's necessary. So seeing as though we're on that item, would the treasurer's office like to present on this report?
Sure.
Floor is all yours, folks.
Sit with you. Let's do that.
Take us all.
We can do that.
We're happy to be here to communicate and present. Thank you for having us. I know all of you in the room here, but obviously by virtue of the position of treasurer, I'm also the chair of the land bank, as you all know. And we made an amazing decision with the land bank and our board to appoint Jill as our executive director. Obviously very experienced, used to work at the state land bank and has been running a quasi land bank out of our office for almost 10 years or 10 years now.
9 years.
9 years, sorry, didn't wanna age you there. So we've been doing a lot of great work, and I'm gonna let Jill talk about it.
Yeah.
So, thank you for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us and thanks for allowing us to do a little presentation. Hopefully everybody got to see the report. This is a requirement of the state land bank through the intergovernmental agreement, so we sent this to them. We had it approved by our land bank board last week, and now we're here just to talk a little bit about what we've been doing. I think the Oakland County, as always, is a standout. But there are a lot of things that we had to do last year according to our agreement with the state land bank. We had the intergovernmental agreement signed in June, and then we started our meetings in October, and there was a lot of things that we had to approve. Services agreement, bylaws, ethics agreement, guiding policies. And we were able to do all of that within the year that the state land bank required us to do that in. So we were pretty excited about being able to, every time we talk to them, they'd be like, you guys did that already? And we could say, yes, we did. So you'll see in our report, there's the board that was appointed, all great members. We've actually been able to appoint Martin Manna and Jeff Campbell to the board. They each had a 1-year timeline on the board. You'll see kind of the timeline that we have followed, showing our meetings. We've had many presentations just to help folks on the board and the public get acclimated to what a land bank does and what the powers of the land bank are. We've had a tour showing our board some of the properties that through the tax foreclosure process, the Oakland County Treasurer owns. So we'll be able to transfer those into the land bank, so they are allowed to have the powers of the land bank, which are they qualify as a brownfield. We can assemble the property, hold them tax-free while they're assembled, help them qualify for other things, connect them with folks at the MEDC. We've had a close relationship with the Center for Community Progress, which is they're leaders in land banking across the country. And they've been able to help us with our policies and just any questions that we have. Also have a very close relationship with the state land bank, who are always able to count on when there's issues that arise.
Let me just say just quickly about the Center for Community Progress. They had a GM grant that because we are located in what they are classified as a GM community, they were able to do like full strategic planning with our whole board, meet with all of us individually, write through complete plans at no cost to the land bank, which was really cool.
Great.
Yeah, so they're a great partner because we're in Pontiac. And I think they'd be great otherwise too, but there's also, they've been able to reach out. They've connected Growing Pontiac, which is a nonprofit that was formed through our office for gardens and green space. They've been able to connect us with the Conservation Fund, and they are asking us to apply for a $15,000 grant for Growing Pontiac to do some strategic work on one of our parks. So it's just a good relationship to have. In this past year, there's been funds available for land banks that have never really been available. Through the state budget, there was funding, rounds 1 and 2. Round 1, we were able to secure $200,000 to do stabilization on 2 houses in the GM Modern Housing District, and a demolition of one next door to one of them.
And those properties were tax foreclosures owned by the Treasurer's Office that we've had for
2014.
Yeah.
Since 2014. So we've been holding on to those, and that is part of my job prior to the land bank was trying to figure out who people were that were gonna buy properties and do something with them instead of just speculation. I think we've seen speculation hurt a lot of our communities, and that was really important to me to figure out who is actually gonna be able to do something with the property. If I sold you a house, because these houses in particular had been through foreclosure a number of times. So people bought them, didn't pay for 3 years, they foreclosed again a couple of times. So at this point, just being able to renovate a couple of them is it's really special for me specifically.
And we did an RFP process
Yep.
with purchasing to select, not developers, but
Yeah,
developers,
developer,
they're
yeah.
doing, yeah.
Yep, they're doing the work. So yeah, that's a good point. We do have a services agreement with the county, so we work with facilities when we need to do procurement items. Also, we were awarded a grant for some stabilization work in Oak Park on the old WWJ building on West 8 Mile that will hopefully become a restaurant from the Union Joints folks that have Clarkston Union. Vincent Garage. It's a really unique building in a really interesting place. And I think if that happens, you can see a lot. It's right in the border of Royal Oak Township too, and Detroit. So I think if that is able to actually happen to become a restaurant, you'll see what a destination restaurant can do to a community. In the report, you'll see just the explanation of the two projects I just talked about. We worked with Ron Campbell from planning, who is a historic architect. He did some drawings for us of what things can look like once they're renovated. And then you'll see a project list, which is basically all the conversations I've had over the year, just trying to figure out how the land bank can work with our communities, and in a variety of ways. A lot of it is housing related. We have some mixed use projects that we're working on, but there's a lot of them in Pontiac. I think, you know, with a land bank, you can see where the needs are the greatest. So working with a developer on a transformational brownfield project at the north end of the loop in downtown Pontiac with the Oakland Press building. With that, they will be relocating Centro La Familia, which is a social services agency in the city of Pontiac, into the old Waterman building on North Saginaw. So I think you'll see big changes in Pontiac, that downtown core that's been kind of ignored for a long time. You have the two-way conversion of the loop, you have this transformational brownfield, you have the county, you have all of this stuff happening. And with that, you know, comes challenges of how do you maintain affordability. So that's part of the conversation we're having. How do we create housing in a way that people that live here or that want to live here can afford it? Couple of other projects. 111 Oneida is a multifamily apartment building that the county has owned since 2014. It was like the week or 2 weeks after I got here, it was foreclosed. And I've been working on that for a very long time. And that is right on the cusp, I think, of happening. So we have the land bank, we have the Missing Middle grant, connection to IFF, which is a CDFI, Community Development Financing Institution, that will front them the money that they will get from the Brownfield TIF. So this organization gives them the money and then they collect the Brownfield TIF. So it allows this developer to have the capital upfront to do the renovation. So that'll be 49 or 50 affordable units. Working with Coleman Yoakum, I think everybody knows him. He owns another school, Emerson Elementary, working on that to hopefully do a demolition of that school. So they can build a number of smaller footprint houses and have a community land trust. So Micah 6 will own the land and then people can purchase those houses and build equity in those. And I think their goal is kind of to move people in their neighborhood that live in apartments into these houses so they can start to build equity and then be able to sell them and realize some gain and then potentially move out to a bigger house. Working with also City of Pontiac, Purdue School. They own a school that is more on the south end of the city. They have a lot of interest in housing for that, so hopefully gonna put a proposal together for demolition of that school too. I know we were talking about demolitions of schools earlier, but these are schools that are not like those schools. These are kind of one story, they've been vacant a very long time, not maintained, and they are a drag on the community. So it's really frustrating, I think, for all the neighbors to see. There's an interesting hole there because a lot of those people went to those schools. So it's sad to see the school go, but it's also a detriment to their property values. So hopefully we'll be able to have good community meetings and figure out how to demolish and create something new that includes green space that the community can use. Let's see, what else have we done? Also, in terms of housing, working with a developer we've sold them. So the treasurer's office, as you all know, forecloses, properties go to a land sale. If they don't sell, they become surplus property. And what we'll do with those is we will transfer them to the land bank and then to a developer. In this specific case, Tollbrook is a developer. We have 37 properties, we're selling them. They're working with the City of Pontiac to build new housing. 204 West New York in Pontiac too is an old school. That also, Community Housing Network is going to be new housing. And then kind of a really cool not housing project is, you might know this building, it's on the corner of Huron and Green by Doctor's Hospital. It's a 3-story, kind of a yellow brick building, it's a multifamily. Working with OLSA, they have submitted a grant to MEDC, I believe, for a community center grant, and they want to create a weatherization training facility. So they wanna take that building, completely demolish it, the interior, build it into something new to show people how they can weatherize their commercial facilities. Then they're looking at the house right next door that is incidentally for sale too, to use that as a residential weatherization training facility. So that'd be job creation, that would help people train for jobs in the new economy, you know, help people make their houses more cheaper to live in, solar, wind, whatever works. And then lastly, I sit on, probably not lastly, but one more thing. MSHDA has a regional housing partnership that I sit on, so we're looking to figure out what the challenges are and how to hopefully figure out what to do about housing. Because honestly, affordability, y'all know, that is a real thing, and if we want to continue to have people move here, we have to figure out what that looks like. And I don't think there's a solid solution, but I think getting people together to talk about that is a good step, and getting all the people that have the power to do things is what we need to do. So I think that is, what? Farming, oh, right, we're working with a developer who we've had a relationship with this property owner, it's the old winery building on Grand River. We've had a history because the folks there it's a trust, I believe, they've owed taxes for many years. A developer who is from Michigan but lived in New York and is kind of back and forth now, fell in love with the building, and he is hoping to turn this into a mixed use residential commercial use. So he has a purchase agreement on that house. We have a land banking agreement with them right now to review, so their attorneys are looking at it, and we'll hopefully take that property into the land bank while they assemble an additional property behind it. And they will then qualify as a brownfield and be able to do their brownfield plan.
Questions? Christensen? Yeah.
Thank you. Very interesting, well-presented report. I have a question. So the 200,000 and the 552.5 came from the state.
Yes.
Okay, so are you dependent on these? Where do you get your money from if you don't get that kind of thing?
Well, properties that come into the land bank and go out can receive a 50% tax capture for 5 years. We call it the 550 tax capture. But honestly, that is not going to sustain a land bank. That is typically vacant lots. I think we have mostly vacant lots. A lot of these properties are dependent on other forms of incentives, brownfields that can mess up with the 550 tax capture. So really, this is the first year that land banks have seen funding, real funding to do projects.
So that's why the entity is housed in the treasurer's office under the treasurer's office budget.
Yeah.
And that's why the staff is not independent, relying on this 550 tax capture, it's like treasurer's office staff.
So if the grants don't come in, it comes out of the treasurer's budget?
Correct.
If we choose to do projects that are this large.
Got it, thank you.
Yeah.
More questions? Commissioner?
Hi, thank you. I see OCC is under here, under Wallingford, so I know a number of us have gotten calls from groups. How is the land bank involved with that?
We met with them to see if we could assist them. The OCC has closed there or is closing.
2025, so yeah.
Yeah, so they were trying to figure out what to do with it. So we were talking about potentially it could sit in the land bank while they work with developers. We could help them qualify for brownfield. It all depends on, it's just the beginning of a conversation, right? They're interested in starting the conversation before it gets ahead of them. And I talked to them about they are interested, the township was interested in maintaining some of the buildings and using them as recreation for the township. So that was part of it. It's still an ongoing conversation.
I was just interested because I saw it on the list, so I wasn't.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Nelson, do you have?
Commissioner Joliet took my question.
Got it.
Go ahead, Bob.
Thank you, thank you very much, Joe. One comment about OCC, and I don't know if most of you know where it's at, on Cooley Lake Road and Hospital Road. You know why it's called Hospital Road?
Cause it was
It was a
hospital.
It was a hospital. OCC used to be a TB sanitary
Oh, yeah.
back in the day. But anyway, I'm asking about, it says potential project list, Andy's Place in Holly.
Oh,
What could happen with that? Because I know they're underinsured.
yeah.
It's just a brick shell with no,
Yeah.
no first floor.
Right, so part of the funding that is coming to the land bank right now has to be used in qualified census tracts. So I talked to the owners of Andy's Place prior to knowing kind of how this funding was gonna roll out, thinking that we might be able to use funding to help them stabilize the building, but they're not in a qualified census tract, so we can't do that. So I keep them on my list, I keep in touch with them in case something happens and I hear of other funding or I know of something that could help them. So I'm not sure what's
Yeah,
gonna
I
happen.
appreciate that. And I know they have applied for a grant or two. I don't know
Yeah.
where that stands, but.
Yeah,
Cause I think just also from a strategic perspective, you know, we're obviously a young land bank, but we think we have a lot of knowledge between all of us and experience and relationships in the community. A lot of this, or some of these rounds of funding are guaranteed amounts to land banks. And we know some of these smaller land banks are not gonna spend this money. So what's gonna happen is there's probably gonna be either more money rolled into round 4 or round 5. So we wanna have like projects kind of on the list, ready to go when they say, you know, other people couldn't spend their money, what can you do, right?
Good idea.
We're trying to make sure all the money doesn't go to Detroit and Wayne County. We wanna get a fair share of the pie.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Great inaugural report, I love it. And a couple comments, Marcia made a comment about the funding, and both, I've also made comments about funding. So hopefully in the future years, we can see a little bit more pictorials. Being an engineer, I like to see pictures of stuff, you know, graphs and pie charts and things that show, here's the funding, here's how it's coming in, here's how it's going out, just so we can understand, is it self-sustaining or not? I know it comes out of the treasurer's budget today, but can we make it self-sustaining or not as a process or a program? I think it's, all the projects are great, redeveloping a lot of these locations that need help to get there. And you mentioned sustainability, let's get us there, and then affordability. You know, we've talked about that a lot as a board of commissioners, and I don't think it's any secret, you know, I'm all for it, but I don't understand the business plan. No business plan that's come forward to me has made sense yet to maintain affordability long-term. Yes, one cycle, we can do it, second cycle, third cycle, to me, capitalism gets in the way and the market gets in the way and it becomes unaffordable at that point. So that's what I'm looking for, is how do we maintain that, or is there a way to get there and keep it there?
yeah,
You know, first step is the easy step in my opinion. The second, third, fourth, fifth step is the hard step. So
Yeah.
that's why I wanna hopefully we can put a lot of this in a report and we can start seeing some of that.
sure.
And maybe we can find something that we could be the leader in the country on how we get there. Thank you.
And I think that we set this up very specifically to be housed in the treasurer's office, so it didn't cost more. And I think it's an economic development tool, right? So folks can come, we can present things to the board. If they choose to put something into the land bank to allow them to qualify as a brownfield, it allows a project that might not otherwise get done to get done. Sometimes that's the difference between economic development and not. So it's not, I think that moving forward, we'll see more projects that just need to qualify for that. And there's new legislation that says if affordable housing is part of your plan or is your plan, it doesn't even need to be in the land bank to qualify as a brownfield. So there's some changes, but I think how we have it set up is unique. And I think having all these project potentials is unique. I think a lot of these smaller land banks have potential projects that don't ever get done. And that might happen here. These are just big conversations that also lead to other conversations. It's about connecting people to who they need to talk to. I know a lot of people at MEDC and NISHDA, so if I talk to somebody, I'm like, the land bank's not gonna work, I can always send them over to somebody else and set up that meeting, or with the city of Pontiac, or with Royal Oak Township, or any of these folks that we talk to all the time. So I think it's just part of connecting people throughout the county to get things done.
And, you know, the relationship with the Housing Trust Fund is unique.
Yeah, definitely.
So,
Yes, and it's been great getting to know Kyle and the Housing Trust Fund, and I think we've already got some projects that we're working on together, so it'll be interesting to see where that goes to.
I'll just say, I really appreciate this. I think this is a great report. And I'll say, because I believe I'm the only renter on the board, I appreciate the focus on building wealth for our community, right? Because if you're investing in places where folks can buy and earn equity and like build their wealth, that makes us as a county wealthier, it makes Metro Detroit wealthier, and that helps all of us in the long run. So I appreciate that. But seeing no further questions, I'll entertain a motion to receive and file. Commissioner Gershenson and Commissioner Spiz. Would you call the roll?
Appreciate
Thank you all.
letting us do this.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
I don't know.
Kaufman? Did
Yes,
you get a vote?
yes.
Push your button.
There we go.
Mr. Chair, you have 8 yeas and 0 nays.
Awesome, thank you all very much. Moving on to our regular agenda, I would entertain a motion to recommend to the board, agenda item A, Human Resources Implementing the Salary Administration Plan, 4th quarterly report for fiscal year 2023. Moved by Commissioner Lubes, seconded by Commissioner Spiz. Thank you very much, hi.
Hi, good morning. Thank you for allowing this on the agenda today. This is the 4th quarterly report for fiscal year 23 of the Human Resources Department Salary Administration Plan, covering any salary grade or creation of new job titles from studies that we've completed up through this through the beginning of September. On this report is one change to the salary grade of 4 classifications, which will impact 10 full-time positions within Veteran Services, a retitle and salary change of 2 classifications impacting 1 general fund position in the circuit court and 1 proprietary funded position in Parks and Rec, and deleting 1 classification that is not used and has no position impact. And I'm open to any questions.
Any questions? Commissioner?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a generic question.
Yeah.
I think come in quarterly in front of us for something like this, and they always seem to be an increase, right? Because everybody's taking on either a different role or shifting role. Do we have any that actually go the other way? Because we're taking roles from maybe this, or responsibilities from this role and moving to this role, so this role gets less, or we eliminate a role. I mean, I just don't see a lot of it. Maybe I'm just not
So
paying close enough attention.
if it's looking like there could be a decrease, departments or employees tend to withdraw their request. We haven't generally brought anything decreasing to the board unless it's under extenuating circumstances or if it's vacant.
Okay, I can understand and respect that. It just, maybe I'll have to pay closer attention, because I would expect to see over time that if somebody's picking up additional responsibilities from a different role, that either that role gets eliminated and we reduce a resource, even though we're increasing the percentage here, but we're reducing a bigger percentage there. Maybe it's something I should pay
And some
closer
of what
attention
we're still seeing is the kind of the fallout from the VSIP separations as jobs are still reorganizing to absorb roles of positions that were not backfilled.
Got it, okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Julia?
I have more of a general question also, and maybe this is for staff. I know that there is a line item in the budget after talking to Kyle John for salaries adjustments for the year. And I totally understand that employees get this right to come to see if they want that, but it would be nice to see where we're at with that line item when this is presented. So is there any way?
Year-to-date summary, is that what you're kind of looking?
Yeah, or every time that there is asking for a classification, like what chunk is that coming out of the line item?
How's it impact?
Out of,
Yeah, how's
you
it
mean
impact?
specifically out of like
yes.
the classification or rate change fund?
Yes.
Or,
Yes,
Okay.
yes, because I talked with Kyle Judd a
Yeah.
couple months ago and he said that there is a line item in there budgeted for this,
yes.
for that purpose, so for the sake of this, I understand all the information is here for what we need, but it would be nice to see where we're at when these are presented.
Okay, we can add that. And also just for further clarification, if a department has favorability within their budget to cover the cost of these increases, that's where it gets taken from first,
Okay, see, that would be great to
Okay.
see also, that it's not coming out of the general
out of the
draw,
classification.
it's coming out of their department.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Anything else? Motion on the table is to recommend to the board, Madam Clerk, would you please prompt?
These are my district. It's tough for me,
Mr. Chair, you have 8 yeas or nays?
Awesome, thank you very much, and
Thank you so much.
Moving on to regular agenda item D, Board of Commissioners, Board of County Canvassers appointments. I'm not going to entertain a motion, right? Because I think we have discussed this. So, anyone have questions, comments, concerns? Mr. Chair, would you like to?
Yeah, I mean, let me just explain, kind of remind people what this process is. It's a little bit unique from the other type of appointments. So the Board of Canvassers performs a ministerial role of certifying elections. They also have some other roles. I believe they play a role in like selection of equipment, approval of equipment and other types of stuff for elections. But the most important role is to certify the election after the full canvass, verifying all the things that happened by election day are accounted, all the numbers add up, and basically it's the final tally of what those things are. 2 Democrats, 2 Republicans, and frankly, I think our Oakland County Board of Canvassers has done a phenomenal job over the years. The way that this is selected, there are nominations that come from the 2 political parties, and this is where things get kind of a little bit more dicey, this year more than others. It's the congressional districts chairs, and there's no formal process for deciding this, that picks, that basically makes a list of 3 nominations. So there's 3 people are considered from on the Democratic side. We have 5 congressional districts that touch Oakland County. I believe there's only, on the Democratic side, there's only 1 that actually lives in Oakland County. And I think the same is on the Republican side, because you've got Southfield's part of a district that's mostly Detroit and Wayne County. You've got Rochester's part of a Macomb seat. You've got the Slotkin seat is part of like Ingham County. And so like the folks that are, the majority of the people we're selecting these on both sides don't actually live in Oakland County. And they are picking the body that certifies our election. I think when this law was created, it was less of an issue because you had either 1, maybe 2, sometimes 4, but most of them covered large sections of Oakland County. So that's one issue. The other thing is that we have a process and point, and there isn't a requirement of experience on this. And we've had a lot of members who had a lot of election experience, et cetera. And there is 1 member that's not even being considered for reappointment. And again, I don't know. Frankly, whoever made that decision, but my guess is, since most of the people are outside of the Oakland County, they don't even know who that person is. That's one issue. And the last one is that I think it's really important for this body to understand that anyone that we appoint on either side of the aisle to fill these roles, and these appointments come up, I think, once every 4-year terms. They're 4-year terms, but there's every 2. So every 2 years, we are appointing or reappointing somebody. That they fulfill their duties and responsibility as spelled out clearly in law. That means if the results come in, you shall certify. And why I bring this up, the last presidential election we saw in Wayne County, without any documentation, without anything, made headline news to not certify an election, which then triggers a whole bunch of other things and chaos. I wish I could say that there wasn't concern that happening here in Oakland County, but the people who were doing their jobs did their jobs and moved forward. And so I think that's really important to ask those questions, that we are interested when we're electing these people. We are electing people to follow the law, to work with our clerk's office, to, if there are issues, to raise those issues, throughout the process and not be an obstruction for the sake of being an obstruction at the end that would force us to go to court and all this other types of stuff, and more importantly, be a laughingstock across the nation. The way that we select people is that regardless of what, even if there was a recommendation here, and I think both caucuses will probably have a conversation, this is historically how it's happened, both caucuses have a conversation. We will get a ballot at the board, so for our new member here, we get a ballot and there will be 3 names for the Democratic member, there'll be 3 names for the Republican member, and then each commissioner votes and then it gets tallied and the one with the most votes for each for the Democrat and the Republican wins. That's how it's decided. So one thing, and I talked to the chair that I thought was appropriate and the law provides for this, instead of bringing all 6 members in for interviews, to ask for a submission of questions, to them, and then with that information, make that available to all commissioners, and then can make a choice from there. Their term doesn't actually expire till the 31st
Of October.
However, and because we have a great legislative member, as vice chair of this committee, we have to take action 10 days after our annual meeting, which, since we advanced our annual meeting to this Thursday, we have to take action within 10 days. Otherwise, the positions is deemed as vacant, and then we are taken out of the process, and then the clerk is left having to ultimately make new submissions of names, and which would probably be the same names, and then the clerk picks for us.
But she still has to pick from that list.
But she has to pick from whatever list is sent. So bottom line, we have to, I thought we'd have at least the October meeting to be able to do this, but I think we have to take action because of how the clock runs. We don't have a board meeting prior to 10 days after our annual meeting.
Commissioner Spitz.
So just ask questions, right? So you plan to call a special board meeting?
Oh, we're not doing a special, I don't think we should do a special, so we're gonna do it Thursday.
Okay,
So-
that was gonna be my second
Yeah.
question, so we're doing it Thursday.
We're gonna do it Thursday.
That's fair.
And I'm recommending some questions to be submitted to all the individuals, and
The law explicitly provides for 3 questions, and we just tacked on 2 more that Amy circulated with the nominees. I would hope that they would take our request seriously enough, because it is explicitly provided
See
by
the
law,
questions?
that they would turn those around pretty quickly.
You see the questions?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
And I have the 2 sections of law if anyone wants to see them. The first is, we're allowed to ask for a letter signed by the nominee indicating an interest in serving on the board of county canvassers and indicating an intent to discharge the duties of the position on the board of county canvassers to the best of his or her ability. The second is prior election experience, including canvassing elections. The third is any information on whether the nominee has been convicted of a felony or an election crime. And then because we're not prohibited from asking additional questions. Number 4 is who won the 2020 presidential election in the state of Michigan in the United States. The 5th is, do you believe the 2022 election results are accurate as approved by the Oakland County Board of Canvassers? Commissioner Nelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So with those questions, it sounds like if I'm understanding, as we lead into our board meeting this Thursday, the responses will be available to commissioners when?
Before that, I mean, we're asking for a close of business Wednesday.
We asked for them to be received close of business Wednesday due to the timeline. I also said that we would accept an email in lieu of a signed letter because of the time constraint. And I'll distribute that information as soon as it's received.
Did these questions already go out?
It went out last night.
Would you like to add more?
Well, I would like a bio on everybody personally. I mean, you could do what you could search through Google, but it doesn't necessarily do each of them justice, I don't think.
isn't that captured in the first, like your experience?
The experience is, yeah, a letter.
It's specific to election experience, I thought, because some may not have any election experience, but might have other professional experience that.
Auditing of some sort,
Yeah.
yeah.
Sure, and I think the first one, and I'm happy to pass this around too, the letter signed by the indicating their interest in serving on the board and their intent to discharge the duties of the position to the best of their ability. I mean, that one's just a letter of interest, and I think that would be a good opportunity. Whereas the other 2 are a little bit more resume based. Have you been convicted of a felony? Yes or no? Yes.
But these people have been recommended by the chairs of
The
each
parties.
party,
Right.
so if you have faith in that system, you would expect that they've done some due diligence. This is a major, serious job. And that they wouldn't want to put somebody on there. I mean, I happen to know a couple of these people, feel comfortable with a couple of them, but.
Yeah, and I'll just say, and speaking with with Commissioner Woodward, I think the hesitation this year versus previous years is it's not the county parties. It is a ad hoc group of the chairs of each of the congressional district parties,
That are outside of the county.
which happen to be
Most of,
majority.
with the exception of one. There's one,
The-
I mean,
the 11
it's possible, I don't have 100% certain, but it's just based on the geographic areas, is, I mean, I would assume there's only one. I mean, I know it for the Democrats, I don't know for the Republicans.
Commissioner Spence.
But I guess, I agree with sending out questions, but I guess who authorized to send out the 5 questions? Shouldn't we be having a discussion about this as a group on what the questions should be going out, or no? I mean, you have the 3 which are in there, which really I don't have a question, an issue with the 3, but I mean, you added on 2, which I understand why they were added on. But I'd like to have a discussion about them, but they're already sent out, and maybe we wanted to add more, which now it's too late because you've already sent them out.
I'm happy to add more. I don't see why not. I frankly, so we were talking about this. I had looked at the law and I asked the election staff if the questions had been circulated, and they said no, which I was a little bit intrigued by because we are explicitly allowed to ask questions, and for a letter of intent, I thought that was pretty standard run of the mill. So I had said, please do that right now. And then Dave and I were just talking a little bit about the questions, but I'm happy to add more. The timeline is very stressing for me too, and I do feel like they will not comply.
If we had 2.
I don't know what to do
But
about
if it's
that
simple
though.
questions like, hey, what do you do? I mean, if you want a bio, I think that's not, I don't think that's unreasonable.
Yeah, it's just like resume.
A resume would be nice.
Yeah. Can we ask her?
If they have a resume, I mean, these are often retirees that have.
They have an old resume.
I don't know, I had to dust
Fine, I
off a
mean-
resume just recently, I'm like, oh, 1998, huh?
I mean, bio, resume, whatever, I mean, I'm open
It's
to
for
either
bio
or.
work, yeah.
Sure.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So how does this vote go today? We know as Republicans, we'll probably vote for. Are we voting for the Democrat?
No.
How's this
So, yeah,
work?
no, so I think is it in the list of the people who were nominated?
Yes.
Yes.
So you might know some of them and not know others. So my recommendation, we don't make a vote today, because one, we don't have any information whatsoever. But it doesn't really matter how we vote today, because what happens is it goes to the full board and every commissioner casts 1 vote for the Democrat commissioner, canvasser, and 1 vote for the Republican canvasser. So we'll have that information. I can speak for the Democrat caucus, that we'll have a conversation in the Democratic caucus.
Well, same.
And then you probably
Okay.
have the same, and
All right.
I mean, historically, we try to land on
Agreed.
what's reasonable or something outside the bounds.
Anything else?
So, just I guess go back to the questions that were sent out last night. You don't believe we're gonna get them all back by end of day tomorrow from these, and how, I guess, may I ask, how were they sent out? Were they emailed, mailed,
Email.
certified mail,
Email.
based on emails that are in?
Based on the information that was available, the email was the.
Okay.
We didn't receive contact information for all individuals, but I was able to get their emails.
Cause it's the clerk's office that's interlocuting with them. The letters that
Yeah.
the parties gave were addressed to the clerk's office, right? Okay.
Yes, and then I reached out to get the missing contact information.
Awesome, thank you. To answer your question, I'm skeptical, but cautiously optimistic.
But either way, we're voting.
Yeah, we have to.
No matter what we have.
I mean, from a timeline perspective, I mean, I guess if everyone wanted to come back for a special meeting, I don't think it's gonna, I mean, if someone says, I don't have time to do this, I guess we could put them on the screen, can you answer these questions?
Alright, fair.
Yeah, we have to unless we want to give the clerk that power, but not for surrendering power, but yeah, Commissioner Nelson.
Kind kind of separate from the item, but not. In regards to, I'm sure all of you know, I'm all about process and procedure. Did we follow process with the questions coming to this committee and then sending them out? Or
It's not ex-
not?
It's not explicit.
I wanna learn,
Yeah,
because it doesn't seem like it was, process was followed. It seems like those questions would have come to this body and then we would have, in typical fashion from what I recall, we would have approved those questions and then sent them out.
There is no process requiring that to be done. I mean, the law lays out some, the ability for the Board of Commissioners to be able to ask that. Frankly, given the time, could we have done that? If we had more time and we were working in October, we could have. I mean, we can definitely add more questions. This is a little bit of a time crunch when it became clear that the 10 days is triggered by the annual meeting and not just the expiration of the term. And so as the presiding officer of this committee, to get information for the committee, I think it's more than appropriate.
and we don't even have to, it just says may request of the nominees the following. And I don't know, my interpretation of the law was fairly vague. But I appreciated that they explicitly listed 3 things that I might suggest of the nominees. That was kind of nice.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any more, Chris?
I'm good, thank you.
All right, I was gonna follow up with that.
Sure.
If I may. I mean, I can understand based on the timeliness and needing to get, not needing, but being able to ask some of these questions. And Dave, you mentioned not a process, but so any of us can send out questions to all these people and I have to have them answered? I mean, if there's not a process, I could send a question there to all 6 and say, hey.
Well, I think it's maybe certainly yes.
I mean, realistically, we could, because there's not a process, but I don't think that's what we as a Board of Commissioners wanna do and have 19 people asking specific questions independently of each other without having a discussion as either a committee or as a board.
Okay, so I mean, let's go back to like the role of every commissioner. Every commissioner ultimately makes a vote. So technically, every commissioner could absolutely send out whatever questions they want to everybody. There is no requirement that a nominee has to answer any of the questions. That's not required in the law either. So to your point, yes, because every commissioner makes their own decision. I mean, this is not it's not a committee recommendation or anything, that they cast their own vote. Can ask any question whatsoever. Given the expeditious timetable that we're on because of when the annual meeting is, this was sent out, faster. No defined process for that. If we want to define a defined process for questions that go to Board of Canvasser candidates, we certainly can do that. But we don't
Okay.
have one.
And I appreciate that comment that we could do it. I guess my real concern is it was sent out as a communication from the Board of Commissioners.
I mean, in an ideal world, that would have been my preference. And to Commissioner Nelson's point, in an ideal world, I absolutely would have loved to come to a list of 7 concrete questions that we could ask all of them, with the 3 not included in that. I don't really have a problem if all of us did our own homework, though.
Well, I agree. I'm hoping that we all do our own homework. That would behoove us, since we're voting on individuals, that we would do our own homework. I'm concerned that communication went out from the Board of Commissioners without having additional conversations with more than just a couple people.
Oh,
That's my concern.
got it. That's a good question. Did it come from Brendan, the curious chair? Did it come from the board?
It came from the analysts, just stating that
Came from staff
additional
at the
questions
direction
were
of the chair.
requested.
That's valid, yeah.
Can I get a copy of what was sent out?
Yeah, absolutely, I can forward it to you.
Can you forward it to all commissioners?
Can we get copies of what you read off of?
Oh, yeah, I can pass this, or we can
Yeah,
look copies. So this is 2 sections of law. The first section provides for the filling of the seat on a regular basis. And then the second section is if the
I don't need a copy.
County Board of Commissioners fails to do so within 10 days, it goes into a vacancy, and then it's how do you fill a vacancy?
Got it. So do we
I
need a
don't
motion to set aside or
That's what I was wondering.
until
I
the board meeting?
don't think you need to take any action. It's
on the
coming.
agenda.
We have to receive and file.
it will show up as an item under new business because it's an action we have to take.
It's actually have to taste.
Yeah.
So we don't,
Yeah, so we don't have to, there's like, the nominations are already coming to the clerk's office. And the clerk will preside over the election, like she has in the past.
So are we receiving in file? It's got substantial attachments to the business, meaning the handbook of the canvassing board, I think would be important to have available.
It's helpful.
That's fine, I mean, we receive and file the information if that's.
Yeah, happy to do that.
If you make a recommendation, it will be attached to the.
handbook's one page.
I don't,
I just, as I said that, I pulled it up.
Okay, I was looking at it, I was like, oh,
So why don't we, okay, so if we wanna do that, we can make a receive and,
I'm scrolling like, wait a minute,
a
what
motion to
page?
receive and file the nominees for appointment and the canvassing board handbook.
Thank you.
So I'll make that.
okay, motion made, a second to that, receive and file motion.
No, I do fine.
Does anyone wanna do that? Commissioner Hoffman, thank you very much. And this is the motion on the table is on your screen, so, God, my English is not great right now. Oh, you did?
Yeah, let me change this to receive. Sorry, alright. Must have accidentally tapped it. Let's try and see. To receive and file. Mr. Chair, you have 8 yeas, 0 nays.
Awesome, thanks everyone.
And we'll get you'll email to all of us the questions that were sent out?
I can forward it.
Cause I thought they were in here, they're not in here.
Thank you. And then moving on then to item C, thank you for your patience on that one. This would be this. Is Commissioner Smith Charles here by chance? On the screen? No? Okay, that's fine. Item C then, I would entertain a motion to recommend to the board, Board of Commissioners recognizing child to parent violence and abuse and encouraging the Michigan legislature and the governor to enact legislation and provide support to families suffering from child to parent violence and abuse. Moved by Commissioner Hoffman, seconded by Commissioner Nelson. Any discussion on that? Commissioner Lopes.
It sounds like this may fall under elder abuse. And I'm not sure of the difference or where she's going with more support for that. So that's my question for the commissioner.
Is there any more supporting information on what the, I mean, putting a non-binding resolution out there's, we do it all the time, but usually I like to have a little bit more meat and potatoes behind that. You know, we either reference a House or Senate bill that's already in process or something that's in discussion or some other type of documentation. You know, I understand the title to a degree, but it's, I mean, it could be relatively large topic versus something that's narrow.
Yeah, I was thinking of the same thing, and that's what I was going to ask the commissioner. There's a lot that goes on in Lansing, and I definitely don't know every bill that's been introduced, but I am unaware of an initiative specific to this in Lansing. Go ahead.
It's
So I drafted the resolution for the commissioner. It's really geared towards bringing awareness towards the issue so that there could be potential legislation or funding made available for this issue because it's an underreported issue.
and I can, if I may, Mr. Chair, I can respect that. But personally, if we're asking for some type of legislation, we should be referencing something, a report, or I mean, even if it's an independent report out there that we're trying to target this.
Commissioner.
So in the resolution, I mean, it spells out states and countries that have enacted legislation to address child to parent violence. The resolution also recognized, which I assume that there's some sort of advocacy group recognizing October 14th, Child to Parent Violence and Abuse Awareness Day. and then speaks to calling on the legislature to, engage at a statewide level, state and local public health level to bring awareness to this, and provide supportive services to help families suffering from CPV, as well as, other types of actions, whether it's awareness campaigns, a special task force designed to study, create programs, and establish interventions. So, I think it does give some context. It doesn't say I'll specifically do this, do this, do this, but references legislation and other actions that have been done to bring attention to this. So I don't see any harm.
I see there's reference to the Florida Senate bill.
Right. But I think it speaks more broadly, that bring attention to this, since it's an underreported activity. I agree with what Commissioner Loop says, that there's an elder abuse element, but this seems like it's also kind of a very narrow, specific type of elder abuse issue, so it probably fits under that umbrella. I don't know the motivation of October 14th. I know there's some time sensitivity to it, and we won't be back before that, so that's the other driving force on this as well, that there's clearly some organized effort, unless we're the first to come up with a date. And why that date? I'm sure it's a date.
It was received from an organization.
So I have no problem.
Any other discussion? Commissioner Nelson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I have to say, I appreciate this resolution as somebody who works with a population of individuals who can engage in some pretty significant, challenging behaviors. We have a lot of really great programs for individuals who are experiencing mental health, behavioral, emotional issues. But I can say, as a provider who works with parents of very challenging children, it is a concern. Like I said, there's very limited programs for parents. And really, when I read this, what I took away from it is that we need to make sure that we're also providing families and parents with those services and supports, and be more proactive in teaching parents some antecedent measures before they may escalate their behavior to another level. Everybody has a limit, everyone has their tolerant levels, and it is the one area that I can say from a behavioral health provider that we do need more services and supports for families, because there is very limited. There are very little options for any family member to seek out additional help, just given the circumstances of maybe what is impacting that parent or caretaker. And I'm not making any excuses. This is a very serious problem, but my heart does go out to families and all caretakers, because there is very, very limited funding. And if you don't have, let's say, a private insurance, it makes it almost darn near impossible for a parent to seek out some support services to work with them on working with the challenging behaviors that they may see day in and day out. So I can appreciate this. I could fall more deep into the weeds with it, but I'm gonna leave it at that. But definitely, I think it's on the right track. I would love to learn more, as we all kind of said already, of what's kind of taking place in the legislation. Is there anything? From my understanding of just my own personal experiences, it's very limited outside of calling 911. So I think we could do better in regards to providing additional services and supports. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions or comments? I'm told the sponsor might be joining us virtually momentarily.
This week on vacation.
I know. So I'm hesitant to move on the motion until she does. Do we want to take a 2-minute recess? 30 seconds. Oh, okay. Now let's has been a good meeting. I thought we'd be out of here in 15 minutes.
Well, that's how it's going.
I got it from the bottom of the Clinton River.
Oh.
And it turns out that I mean, it's only 4 feet deep, but that was enough to kill my phone, so any appointment or note or something from last Thursday till Sunday morning.
What's even harder too is
The bottom of the Clinton River.
pursuit every
And
action.
that the kayaking thing that you were able to make. And so my phone found the bottom of the Clinton River.
Oh, no.
So did I. And it was in my shorts. And so, but it was awesome. It's an awesome
I know, I was so bummed.
Yeah, he'll,
I
he's gonna do it again,
heard,
he's gonna do it again.
you
It's,
know.
it is shocking.
That's what I heard.
Good morning, Commissioner Smith Charles.
Shocking.
Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you doing?
I'm great. I appreciate you all making time for this item on your agenda. And if I'm in order, just the things that you have in front of me, in front of you are some of the explanations to it. Are there any questions specifically that I can entertain?
Any questions specifically for the commissioner?
I guess I just like a little more information, a little bit more of an outline. Yeah, we have what's in the resolution, but is there any other additional input that's out there available relative to the issue you're trying to attack here?
Sure. This is more or less to highlight and advocate for parents who are in this predicament of actually being afraid of their children and not really having a way to, or at least it's a stigma. It's kind of stigmatized if you think back to a good old episode of Jerry Springer or Ricky Lake back in the day where the child is cussing out the parent and things like that. And you would be like, oh, not in my house, not in my neighborhood, but it's happening more and more. And it's really not made aware. So these parents sometimes don't have the avenue and the outreach to be able to support what they need. And we also don't want to over police. It's not about, arresting kids, but from just the accounts that Marcia provided at caucus last week, we have whole wings of Children's Village where there are young people there who have been found to be dangerous to their own parents. So there's some initiatives moving towards Lansing. And this would basically be to say that we would support that. And again, having a voice at the table to say, we don't want to over police. It's not about arresting kids, but we do want to be able to support parents as best possible.
Commissioner, do you have a legislative partner? Is there a bill that's been drafted and introduced? We're just curious about the actual status in Lansing.
Thank you for that, Mr. Chair. I don't have that in front of me. I do apologize. If we determine that, well, let me just back up. Let me grab something really quick. I do believe it was, now, Commissioner Johnson, you might be put on the spot. Does anything trigger your remembrance from discussions in Lansing?
No, I will say I am not privy to everything, and there have been thousands of bills introduced already this year, but no, not specifically.
Okay. Just going back over some things.
It doesn't mean the answer is no. It just means I.
Right. I don't see it specifically. I know, like, typically when these things make their way to being resolutions, a lot of times the analysts have dug in a little deeper because the initial ask was simply to recognize this as a thing. The Michigan legislature part was kind of a new piece. So let me just make sure I'm not overlooking anything.
And while you're looking, Commissioner Nelson's got a follow-up question.
Commissioner Charles, I first want to say I do appreciate you bringing this forward. It is something that really is important and not a lot of people are aware of it. So with that being said, when I read down the resolution, that second to last, be it further resolved, right? The Oakland County Board of Commissioners declares October 14th as Child to Parent Violence and Abuse Awareness Day. What can we do here in Oakland County to promote the awareness of this?
Right. I do believe just in acknowledging it here with our miscellaneous resolution and making sure that parents know that they have resources available to them before hopefully before the child ends up in our custody as far as like the criminal justice system. Gosh, I wish I had asked Tabitha to hop on this morning to give a little bit more insight, but I didn't. So just going back in some of our notes.
So Commissioner Charles, just throwing a thought out there, you know, a lot of times as we talked, like doing non-binding resolutions, what are we gonna do with it, right? We don't just wanna file it away and move on. What about if the Board of Commissioners maybe partnered with OCHN and did a news release about promoting some resources and supports that we presently have available here in Oakland County? I'm just trying to think of an action that would be meaningful because this is an important topic. And sometimes it first starts with having that conversation and promoting what we do have available.
OCHN has the new facility here through Common Ground, so that we could help promote.
Sure, I love that.
That would help for this. The new family center. More beds.
Yes, I welcome all of that. Thank you, Commissioner Nelson. So I'm not against that at all. However, we could make it more robust. I'm all for.
Commissioner Smith-Charles, I understand that we've been kind of putting you on the spot right now. I don't worry that we'll pass this out of committee. I would just maybe if you want to talk to Tabitha or whatever. Get in the road by Thursday.
Who can I forward any is that Pam there on the corner?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. At the table. Yeah. Okay. Let me round back and certainly send any more information if I come across it. But on its merit, I'm hopeful that this would move forward. But I will be prepared during caucus tomorrow to also bring a little bit, or I'm sorry, Thursday morning, to expound on this a little bit more, because it's no outlay of capital, so that means nothing going to finance. Looking for the chair to nod. I can't see Brendan, I can just see.
I'm nodding.
Okay. Yeah, I'm happy to bring more insight and do a little more on this, but I appreciate your time this morning.
Yeah, we appreciate you jumping on.
Thank you for calling in.
Thank you.
All right, motion on the table is to recommend to the board. Madam Clerk, would you please call the vote? Thank you, Commissioner Smith-Charles.
Mr. Chair, you have 8 yeas, 0 nays.
Thank you very much. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all.
Moving on to public comment number 2. Anyone from the public wishing to address us on any topic, please make yourself known. Seeing none. Does anyone have anything else they'd like to talk about? Any other news? Business? No. Cool. Oh, Commissioner Gershenson.
Yeah, I just want to get my cheat sheet out. Yesterday, I was listening to DTE, and there was a speaker on Stephen Henderson talking about the strike. And, you know, we're all reading and hearing bits and pieces, but I am going to recommend this to people to get a little bit more background, because I know I certainly did. And it really explained the 40% ask, which I know a lot of people have been horrified about. But the fact is that in 2008, the union made concessions and they lost 18%. So you have to take away out of that 40% ask that 18%, which just brings them back to where they were. And in 1967, the union workers were making $19 an hour. Today, they're making $18 an hour. The ask is for, really?
Preface that. You said they are making, that's not all of them, that's not true.
Okay, well,
Maybe
the
the new-
workers that
maybe
were
the new
making 19
hires
are now making 18, so that same classification. But the issue is really that profits have skyrocketed for a lot of corporations. And so you're looking at this 1%, this Mary Barra, all these who got a $10 million pay raise, I think. And you're looking at the inequity between the top and the workers. And it's the philosophy of when a corporation is making a lot of money, that they should put some of that profit back into their people, the people that have made that profit. Okay, so I guess that's not flying well over on that
Well,
side of the table.
It's
But
bigger
it
than that.
really helped me understand and respect Sean Fain's position on putting this issue out. It's a bigger issue than the automotive. It's an issue about inequities of salaries in these tremendously profitable companies not putting more money into their workers. And so I really gained a lot out of it. And if anybody's interested, I have the link to that broadcast.
It's a really interesting time, and I appreciate you bringing that up.
Please send to me, but it's much bigger than that. I mean, working
Well,
in the
this
auto.
is just a part of it,
I know,
you're
but
correct.
working in the auto industry, my dad's part of the UAW, I see both sides of it. And yes, I would agree 150,000% that the CEOs are making way too much money and the disparity gap is way too large. That needs to be addressed and addressed quickly, if we can address it. But by saying they're not investing money back in, they are. They're investing so much money into EVs. I mean, you're talking billions of dollars going into EVs that everybody in this discussion keeps forgetting about. They're making profits, yes, but they have to put it back into the EVs. They're each losing 4 to 5 to 10 billion a year today in the EV section alone. So it's called reinvestment now. Should they put more into workers? That can be debated and discussed, yes. I don't disagree. I mean, both sides need to come to the table and have a discussion and hopefully come to an agreement, because it's not only gonna hurt those directly involved in UAW or at General Motors, Ford and Stellantis, it's hurting all, especially in Southeast Michigan. All the tier ones, all the tier twos, all those suppliers that are gonna eventually be hit by this, it's gonna hit them soon. So we need them to get to the table and resolve this somehow. However they come about it, that's up to them.
Yeah, and I did see that they were going back to the tables today. I believe the UAW announced potential second wave strikes for Friday at noon. I may be wrong about that, but definitely keeping tabs on that. Any other news and announcements? All right, folks, I'm gonna adjourn this meeting at 10:50. Thank you all very much.
Check.